All right.
Okay.
All right.
Harold is there. Okay. We lost Walter. We lost Elazar. Yeah. Okay, here's Yaakov. 194.
Mhm.
Good evening.
We learned we did the Rav Moshe. Did we do Rav Moshe that tefillin, that davening with a minion is a chiyuv? We did that already on
I
190.
think so. Where at the Ruch HaShulchan also indicates there's an obligation to daven with a minion.
So yeah. So Rav Moshe said basically that there's a chiyuv to daven. It's not like a rishus. It's a chiyuv. And the Aruch HaShulchan says the same thing. Hadar b'yishuv tochmil l'makom shemispalim basar. You live in a community where there's a minion within a kilometer. Chayev leilech b'chol yom boiker ve'erev l'ispalim b'tzibur. He can't say it more clearly. He says you're obligated to go daven with a minion. Upshita shelo yashkim odam leilech baderech l'dover harishus me'ir sheyesh sham beis hakneses. Person shouldn't wake up early to go on his road to a different city from a city that has a shul. Even if he's going very early. The Ruch HaShulchan recognizes that people are not nizar in that. Why? We're going for our parnasa. The nechsha zel davar mitzvah. He says it's like oisik b'mitzvah. Going to make a parnasa is a commandment. Shari mitzvah lefanis ishto v'zaro. The ishto choyvel parnasa. His wife, that's part of the ksuba. Ksus she'er v'oina. So that's minat Torah. Ubanav v'noisav amru chazal. We've already learned in Ksubis that you don't have an obligation on your children, but it's a tzedakah. That's an example of a tzedakah that you do all the time. So Rav Aruch HaKochim says the fact that we go early in the morning sometimes to our parnasa, even though and maybe we'll daven on the road. Remember we learned those halachos. We could daven in the train, right? Is because of this inyan. Because there's a chiyuv and a chiyuv. There's a chiyuv to daven, but there's a chiyuv to provide parnasa. So it's like you have competing mitzvahs. Other poskim, like Rav Ben Sion Abba Shol, right? That it's not, Tefillah b'tzibur is not an absolute obligation based upon Shulchan Aruch. It's, the Shulchan Aruch said you should be mishtadel. One should attempt. L'cheiner shekeven she'en tefillah b'tzibur chiyuv gomer. Koloshen Moran, like the Shulchan Aruch, B'Simen Tzadik, Sif Tes, Yishtadil Odin Lispal V'Esek Nesim Atzibur. A person should try. Ein Lispal Mincha Gedoyla, Shehi B'Di'evet B'Shvil Tefillah B'Tzibur. You should try to daven, and don't daven early. You have a mincha gedola is at the the 12th hour and a half, 12 chatzos and a half. But later on there's a minyan b'tzibor, you shouldn't daven mincha gdola. It's only b'di'eved. You should wait for the mincha ketana later in the afternoon. And he can play, you should pray mincha ketana by himself rather than mincha gdola with a minyan. That's an interesting halacha.
We actually had that question, Simchas Torah at Yavne. There was a proposal that after all the dancing and the aliyahs and Muslims,
They should do a mincha.
They want to do mincha, and they
Yeah.
decided they would do it 1:15.
Go ahead.
But those of us who didn't stay to the very end came to mincha later, mincha katana time, and we had 8 people. So it was a bad feeling, and then we got criticized for leaving early.
According to some opinions, one should not recite mincha in the early afternoon, and that'll be discussed later on in the shiurim on mincha. By the way, everybody, I received volume 12. So we'll try, same thing, $17, same price. I think we're getting it at a good discount. I don't know what it is. I think at Amazon it's 30. So they're still keeping the same price to us. And either come Tuesday night or the Valley people. I'll try to remember to give it maybe to my son-in-law when I see him, but he's not going to be with us for Shabbos. So, we'll get it to everybody. We have time before we learn volume 12, a lot of time. So even those poskim that hold that Tefillah b'tzibor is an obligation, agree that one is only required to travel up to a distance of 1 mil from one's home, or up to 4 mil if one is traveling in the direction of the shul, as recorded in Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Ha'olech b'derech, person's walking on the road. V'gi'a le'ir, he reaches the city. V'rotza lo lunbo, he wants to sleep overnight in that city. Im lefonav adalid milim, Mokum shemispalin b'yud. Now, let's say 4 kilometers from this city is a place that they daven with a minyan. So he may not stop in the city and go to sleep. Tzorech leilech sham, ula'achra tzorech lachzor ad mil kedei lispalin b'yud. Now, that's if you're going forward in the direction. If you go backwards and you forgot that you're only required to go back 1 kilometer. You're supposed to go forward 4 kilometers, but only back 1 kilometer. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yoshev beveso dino kilama achra. And if you're in your house, not traveling, you only have, like as if you were going back. So he says, if there's a minyan within 1 kilometer of your house, you have a chiyuv to go there. One practical question that arises based upon this discussion, pertaining to the importance of Tefillah b'tzibur, concerns traveling to a place where there is no minyan. Are you even allowed to set out on a trip if he knows that he will be unable to participate in minyan at his destination or while he is in transit? At first glance, one could argue that this case may be included in the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch, that one who is onus is exempt from Tefillah b'tzibur. But the question here is whether one who chooses to travel is truly considered onus or not. Maybe it depends upon why you're traveling. Like we could learn right now, we've learned already that Parnasa is a mitzvah. So if you're traveling for Parnasa, l'chora, that would be okay. Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg is cited in Halichos Shlomo as bringing proof that one is always permitted to travel, even if one may not have access to a minyan during the trip. He refers to the opinion of the Baal Hamor in Shabbos, a Rishon, who writes that it is permitted to board a ship or set out on a caravan more than 3 days prior to Shabbat, even if one knows that he will be forced to desecrate Shabbos. In such cases, the only prohibition is to set out 3 days before Shabbos. And not that this is the ruling of Shulchan Aruch as well. By the way, regarding the kilometer, Rav Moshe Sternbuch in the Truvas Vanogos and Rav Yisrael Pesach Feinhandler, the measurement is based upon time, not based upon distance. Therefore, one who has a car should drive the amount of time it takes to walk a mil, 18 minutes for these purposes, in order to join a minyan, assuming the minyan will definitely take place. It's not dangerous, and that the monetary expense involved is not large. The Pnei Halacha of Eliezer Melamed argue that if one is not already out of the house, the question is a machlokas achronim, and one who does not wish to drive has opinions upon which to rely regarding this mil. Now, Shulchan Aruch says, "Hayotzim b'shayar b'midbar." Person goes on a caravan. V'akol yodim she'en tzrichim l'chal Shabbos. Ki b'nei hasakana lo yuchlu la'akev b'midbar b'Shabbos levadam. No one's going to be left behind on Shabbos because of sakana, because they can't be there alone. So we know for sure there's going to be a violation of Shabbos. So, Gimel Yomim Kodim Shabbos Asurim Lotzes. If it's within 3 days of Shabbos, they're not allowed to go. But on Sunday, Yom Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Monday, Tuesday, Mutter Lotzes. If there will be a sakana, Yitzral Chal Shabbos B'nei Pikuach Nefesh Mutar, Ve'en Kal Chilul. Meaning, you know for sure what's coming. So he's going to use that as a tzushtel, as an example or as an analogy to the case where you're traveling and there's not going to be a minyan. You know for sure it's not going to be a minyan, but it's not any difference in this case. You leave Sunday on a desert caravan, you know for sure there's going to be Chilul Shabbos, right? The rationale by not setting up beginning on Wednesday is due that a rabbinic obligation exists from Wednesday to ensure that he can properly observe Shabbos. But with regards to Tefillah, Rav Zalman Nechemia argues that there's certainly no such obligation prior to the time of Tefillah, that we properly observe Tefillah. Thus, in his opinion, it is permitted to travel even when knowing that one will miss davening with a minyan during that time. And it's only a midas chasidus to try to be careful. But however one can dismiss this proof based on the Yeshuas Yisrael, who writes that the Baal HaMor is lenient only regarding placing oneself in a situation of danger to life, since it's completely permissible to violate Shabbos. He would not permit placing oneself in a situation where one will be forced to commit some other transgression beyond one's control. The reason for this distinction, I'm reading the footnote, is that according to many achronim, the Afla and the Kovetz Shiurim, which is Rav Elchanan Wasserman, the standard halachic category of ones does not include placing oneself in a situation where one could come to sin intentionally, which is treated as an intentional act. Rather, onus includes situations beyond one's control, where someone does not plan or intend to transgress a prohibition. For this reason, one would not be considered ones if he placed himself in a situation where he could not build a sukkah or purchase a lulav. Rather, he would be responsible for his inability to fulfill the mitzvah properly. This issue of traveling to locales where one will be unable to daven with the minyan is complex, and additional logical arguments could be made in either direction. For example, the exemption of going more than a meal to join a minyan may stem from the fact that Chazal instituted the guidelines of how far one should go for this purpose, being that one need not travel more than this distance, not related to the din of ones. If so, perhaps Chazal also decreed that the obligation to participate in minyan does not apply ahead of time, and one may travel to locales in which fulfilling the mitzvah of Tefillah B'Tzurba is not possible. On the other hand, the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch that one should not leave a city early in the morning in which there's a minyan supports the contention that you should not travel to a place where he will definitely not be able to attend the minyan. So, So according to the Alicha Shlomo, the practice, which is Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Zalman Nechemi Goldberg, the practical halacha is that one should not plan to travel to a place where no minyan exists, unless one travels for reasons of livelihood, health, or other mitzvah activities. If you're not sure how to conduct yourself, you could consult with a halachic authority for guidance. Many of the places we go to now, even when we travel, if you travel, Torah in motion, there's already a built-in minyan. Many people go to Hawaii. There's already minyanim there because you go to a programmer. You know that many people are traveling there. Certainly when you go to Israel, you know that there's minyanim. Of course it's, and even when you travel now, there's Chabad. People check. They go to Venice. Oh, we know there's a Chabad there, etc. So there's a lot of eitzes today regarding travel. 197. Should women participate in Tefillah b'tzibur? I just want to mention, my wife is sitting here. In Ranana, we were Shabbos Chol Hamoed in Ranana. So first of all, we were in the Shtibel with Moshe Bronner. We were treated very nicely there. Effie Nissim sat right next to me. Beautiful shul. The Ulam has been designated to Mr. and Mrs. Rabbi and Dr. Bronner, the Ulam of the Shtibel. So it was nice to see that. But there's another shul called Ohel Ari. We went Friday night. I don't think I've ever seen more people in a shul for davening. There had to be 1,000 men from side to side, and all the women were in the shul. They come Friday night for Lechadodi. So it's just something to see. My kids live a couple blocks. Yeah, but it's not as big as Bnei Yeshua. I mean, Bnei Yeshua is not as big as this shul. I didn't think so. So as we have seen, the value of Tefillah b'tzibur is quite significant, at least for men. What is the halacha regarding women? Are women obligated or encouraged to participate in Tefillah b'tzibur in shul when possible? Is it considered a value at all for women? Or is there no difference for them between davening at home and davening at shul? Rav Yaakov Yitzchak Fuchs, in the Sefer Hilchos Bas Yisrael, which is a halacha sefer which discusses, mitzvahs that women are mechuyev in, says women have no obligation to pray with the minyan, but it's considered a worthy thing to do. Av she'enisha mitzarfus leminyan asara, right? We've already learned that you can't count them in a minyan. Ve'eni mitzvah l'spal b'tzibur, and they don't have a mitzvah to daven b'tzibur. Mala g'doyla l'tfilas v'ves hakneses. It's a great thing. She'll have great merit. Rav Eliezer Papo, the author of the Pele Yoetz, writes in his Chesed La'alofim that it's appropriate for women to go to shul. Yoter tov shetelch lebeit hakneshet shel nashim v'titpalel matzibur. She should go to this shul and daven in the women's section and daven with the tzibur. The royal Yirei Hashem chosh ve'shol lamed zishtov noisav seder tefillos u'brachos. A Yiras Hashem, a person, a man, should teach his wife and children how to daven the brachos. Even if it leads to the wife not doing all her housework. Should not be critical of his wife, because his honor is nothing against the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Both of them, the man and the woman, is chayiv in giving kavod to Hashem. Rav Yitzchak Pesach Feinhandler discusses whether a woman should try to daven with a minyan at the expense of another mitzvah. He rules that it should not detract from her ability to perform other mitzvahs. Meaning, if she's doing another mitzvah, she shouldn't break that and go to daven b'tzibur. He says, "Balichos bas Yisrael." He quotes the Alichos bas Yisrael that it's a great Maila. But he says, Yesh la'ayin. Im avura Maila azois shel tzibur, muter le'isha lafsid mitzvah cheres. Can she lose a mitzvah in order to do this Maila Gedola? Uvemes kashalavin she'isha shemizbel doesn't nothing. Nechsheves ketfila b'tzibur. He even says, it's hard to imagine that when a woman davens in the Ezra Snoshim, that it's considered that she's participating in Tefillah B'tzibur. Sharei eino ba'oso cheder kamo tzibur. She's not in the same room as the tzibur. V'kama mekomis gam ein roya some. Sometimes she can't even see them. So basically, she's not considered part of the tzibur. Lachei nirli shamatovim ha'isha yichol lispal b'tzibur. Fine, if she can daven b'tzibur, yes. Aval lo cheshbon shum mitzvah cheres. But not if it's going to detract her from doing other mitzvahs. Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach seems to take the position that Tefillah B'tzibur has no elevated status whatsoever for women and would be nearly equivalent to Tefillah at home. Isha lo tidalik b'tzibur at Tefillah k'dei laspik l'spal b'tzibur. She shouldn't skip parts of her davening to catch up to where the Tefillah of the Tzibur is, like Shmon Esrei, because Ki ein lo din Tefillah b'tzibur klal, according to Rosh Shlomo Zalman. However, Rav Advadia Yosef writes, the Yalkut Yosef, that even one takes the position that women do not have any reason to join in minyan, they still receive reward for responding to Dvarim Shabbat and the like. Kedusha, Kaddish, Me'achar v'noshim chayavis b'tefillah. Lachein iskinu b'chol beis knesses getzim yichod le'noshim. It's not for nothing that shuls have prepared an area in the shul that's an Ezras Noshim, because they're chayiv in tefillah. V'anan en anoshim chayivis b'tefillah b'tzibur. They may not be chayiv in the special gathering of the minyan. Sharei ena mitztarfus l'minyan. Mikol makom yesh le'en schara masha oidos amein achar shliach tzibur, when she answers amein or achar omer kaddish v'shamis kriyas haTorah. Okay. 199. No, did we learn Kaddish yet? We'll learn. They'll have a section on Kaddish, and there's a machlokas, and we'll get into. I would wait until we learn that beferish, how the halacha was derived today. I've seen a lot of it in the Avelis literature that I've been through over the last couple of weeks regarding that. Another important halachic ramification of fulfilling the imperative Tefillah B'tzibur is how precisely to define the presence of the tzibur. What is the halachic definition of the tzibur? Does it include 10 people standing together in a room, even if some are not reciting the Amida currently? The Chai Adam addresses this question in the following source and writes that all 10 individuals that comprise the minyan must begin the recitation of the Shemona Esrei at the same time. Otherwise, the gathering does not qualify as Tefillah B'tzibur. So when we are in the shul, we have to make sure, according to Chai Adam, we'll see if this is the final psak, but according to Chai Adam, you want to have at least 10 people starting Shemona Esrei at the same time. Otherwise, it's not, and then certainly we'll see how many people do you have to have listening when the Shliach Tzibur is going to come. It's going to be the same, and that's very relevant to us, right? The Chazan takes us 3 steps back and then he waits. What is he waiting for? Does he need to have 6? Does he need to have 10? So we're gonna deal with all of this. So says the Chai Adam, remember, Chai Adam was Rav Danziger, lived like 1750, about the time of the Gra. and one of the major achronim in halacha, again, before the Mishnah Brura, many people use the Chai Adam as their, it was more than the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and they would use the Chai Adam. I remember school Chai Adam, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we take the Chai Adam. There was the Tefillah Zaka was in Chai Adam before they were printed in the Machzorim. It was printed in the Chai Adam, the Tefillah Zaka of Yom Kippur. Ikarat Tefillah B'tzibur Tefillah Yud Ches. So the main aspect of Tefillah B'tzibur is the Shmona Esrei. The Hainu Shispalu Asra Nochim Shem Gdolim B'Yachad. 10 people, adult, have to daven together. Lo kamo shechoshvina amon sheikar lispal basar rak mishum lishmo kaddish ukdusha baruch. And it's not like the way the public, the mass public, thinks that you need 10 to be able to answer the kaddish kedusha baruch. V'lachein einam makpidim lispalel biyachad rak sheyeh yud beis haknesses. People, we have a minyan in the shul. That's enough. They're not makpid that all 10, or at least that they have 10 to start Shmona Esrei together. He says, who toes Godel? It's a big mistake. People should come to shul on time. So that they daven with the chazan. So they can be with all the tzibur could sort of be on the same pace. They say the Birchas HaShachar. Parshas HaTamid. Shehu bavnesenu achshav l'makom korban HaTamid shel Shachar. The Yispala Keseder. And Kishem Yispala Matzibur also lagdim tfiloso ad she'Yispalu Matzibur. You shouldn't start davening Shmona Esrei before the tzibur starts davening. I feel let's say it's chutz lebeis haknesses. Also, im lo shu chola or onus, unless he's sick or something accidental happened, or shatzibur marichim piyutin u'miser she'avers manfila, or let's say it's certain day where they say a lot of piyutin, and he sees the tzibur is going too long, he's going to miss manfila. Then he can say it even before then. However, he should go home and daven. Now, the Mishnah Brura accepts this verbatim. Don't think that the reason for the minyan is for Kaddish. They're not looking at, did we have 10 when we daven Shmona Esrei? As long as they have 10 in the shul, it's enough for them. It says zetos. According to Chayot. According to this approach, it seems that the participants in the meeting must all recite Shmona Esrei together for it to be deemed Tefillah B'tzibur. The Mishnah Brewer, though, contradicts himself. In Siman 69, he writes, Name Lagan Avram. Then when it comes to the element of Tefillah B'tzibur, a majority of the minions, 6, has the status of the tzibur. Aval kishesh rav minyan, heim kimot tzibur gomer, ayin b'bir halacha. One explanation given is that the true intent of the Mishnah Berurah in Siman 90 is that as long as 10 are present, only 6 must be reciting Shemona Esrei at that time, in accordance with what he said later on in Siman 69. Rav Moshe Feinstein offers a different approach in the Igros Moshe. Rav Moshe distinguishes between the notion of Tefillah B'tzibur and the need for a minyan for the parts of Tefillah called Dvarim Shebekdusha, such as Kaddish, Kedusha, and Baruch Hu. Let's learn the Igros Moshe together. Be'inyan im sagi berubin shelo hispalu lichasher b'malas Tefillah B'tzibur. Is it enough to have 6 out of 10, which is rov, right? 50% is half. So the one above 50 is 6 out of 10. So that would be a rov. Is it enough to have rov in order to have this special mile of Tefillah B'tzibur? And even if some of the other 4 had already davened, is it enough to have 6 people who didn't daven to make that tefillah a tefillah b'tzibur? Hinei b'dvar mailas tefillah b'tzibur sheshama she'amarti shudavka k'shekol asar mispav lo sagim rav aminim. He is quoting the Chayada and the Mishnah Berurah that you got to have it's not enough to have the majority 6. You need to have the minyan. Who I emet. He says it's true. It says in the Chayada straight like that. That which the Mishnah Berurah wrote that it's enough to have 6. Urak li'inyan loymar davar shebedusha. That 6 who I guess haven't davened yet, that'll be enough for, let's say, Baruch Hu. Let's say 4 have already said Baruch Hu. The Roiv Minyan would suffice for those things. Ve'atam pashut, the lo shaykh inyan ruba kekulo al shi'urim. When you have measurements, you need a kazayas matzah to eat on Pesach. To say you have a 60% of the kazayas, that's meaningless. When it comes to an absolute shear, you need the shear. If you have a finite amount less than the kazayas, you're not going to be yotze the mitzvah. Having 10 to make a minyan, that's a shear. In shaykh ruba kakulo, you can't use the concept of roiv kakulo. You can use the concept like the last day of Shiva, right? You sit some of the day. There's a concept of ruba kakulo there. Same thing by the day of Shloshim. Lachen gam b'shir demisper in shaykh ruba kakulo. The chazinan gam kan gufe b'chashivat tzibur de be'in asor mikra de toch veda eda. Right? The Indian of Minyans learned from Ada, which talks about the Meraglim. With you had 12, but without Yeshua and Kalev, you had 10. So we can't apply Rubo Kakulo. Aflin Amiris Darash B'Kedusha, but to be able to cite Baruch Hu or to say Kedusha, Be'inan Kol Asar V'Lo Sagi Beruba. He says we also need 10. And it's not enough to have 6. Mishum de kol hashir matzim b'midos kenu b'shir misparim u'mishkolos. Measurements like kazayas and revias, the same measurements of numbers or weights. She'ein lefachot af mashu mima shenema. V'rak sheyesh asor shu kol asach shetzorach l'chashivas tzibur. In order to have a choshev tzibur, you need 10. V'hanidonu rak kama tzrichin lios mechuyovin ba'amir sadavar shebekdusha k'tei sheyuchlu lomar. The question is, how many have to be obligated to recite the Baruch Hu to say it? The Imkvar Niftaru, you have 4 people who already heard Baruch Hu, or already heard Kedusha. The Imkvar Niftaru, and you call them Av Sheyesh Kan Tzibur, even though you have a minyan, maybe you'll say no because they already were Makayim. There you say, B'zeh Shaykh Din Ruba Kekula. There, as long as you have a majority, that's enough. Shekivin Sharov Mechuyovin, the majority of the people are Mechuyev because they haven't said Baruch Hu yet. Nidin Kemo Shekulan Chayovin and V'yichol Lomar. V'in came B'tfila, same thing with Shmon Esrei. Shirashayim Mechuyv L'spalagam B'yichidi. If you're not in the shul, you have a personal chayv to say Shmon Esrei, even if you weren't in the shul. Therefore, rak sheyesh, there's a maila. The chashivus l'spalu b'tzibur. You're davening with a minyan adds a certain value to it. Shu keshi ispalu tzibur shem asara when they have 10. So then, therefore, in shach klal lomar sheyaski beruim mispalulim. So then, it's not good enough to say you can start with 6. Like we say for a davar shebekdusha, like Baruch Hu, or Kaddish, or Kedusha. Like he quotes it that the elevated status to pray with a tzibur is you have to have 10. And there you can't use Ruba Kukula. According to Rav Moshe, since the Amida can be recited alone, the title of Tefillah Tzibur can only apply when all 10 men recite together. He compares this to other case of minimum measurement, where the entire measurement is required, not the majority. In contrast, the requirement to have 10 men obligated in Dvorim Shebekdusha may not mean that all of them must actually be davening at that time. Rather, as long as 6 of them are davening, then Kaddish, Kedusha, and Baruch Hu may be recited if 10 are present altogether. You have 10 men in the room. Some people came late and they're saying brachos. They're not davening with the rest of the people that are at Baruch Hu. What they're saying is you can say Baruch Hu. Even the 4 are not, or even if let's say they're in Aleinu, right, and they're hanging around there, and they've already heard Baruch Hu. You can count the 4 who have been niftar along with the 6 that need the Baruch Hu. He says Rav Chaim Kanievsky takes the same position regarding this issue. However, the Dayan Weiss, the Minchas Yitzchak, Rav Yitzchak Yaakov Weiss takes an opposing position. Rav Yitzchak, Dayan Weiss passed away within the last 10 years. He is a major posek that we rely on many, many halachas, like Rav Vosner. These are all contemporary poseks. Rav Yitzchak Weiss takes an opposing position that the categorization of Tefillah B'tzibur applies to a group of 10 men, even when not all of them are reciting the Shemona Esrei. Nevertheless, Rav Weiss recommends trying to ensure that the minyan is comprised of at least 10 men who have not yet prayed. Sof Davagam, Lanias Daitik, he says, in my humble opinion, Nira Kamosha Kosov Kvod Toirosoi, somebody had asked him a question, and he says, it looks like the way you write, that if you have only 6 that are actively davening now, and 4 others that are in the room but are not davening, the Dayan Weiss says that's okay. Omnam, he says in another place, in the same simon, when it comes to the Chatchila the din, Kosav Sefer Leket HaKemach, Yesh La'achmir L'Lavi Tefillah B'tzibur, that it's not Tefillah B'tzibur unless you start with 10. Nira La'alocha, the Yesh La'achmir L'Chatchila Hechad Efshar. You should try to be Machmir L'Chatchila regarding this issue. Aval B'lo Yasha Nira the Canal, but if we have no choice, but you can rely on the 6 plus 4. I think it's more talked about the way we mentioned. 10 people have not reached Shemona Esrei yet. 6 are there. Some have come late. They're in Baruch Sha'amar. They're not davening Shemona Esrei yet. Or you could imagine 4 people have finished davening, but they're hanging around to make the minyan. But in both of those cases, like Bernie was asking, well, I mean, we schlepped 4 people from the street, but it's not necessarily just that. It's like in a shul, like where you want at least 10 people to be saying Shemona Esrei when you say Shemona Esrei, when you start Shemona Esrei. Otherwise, it's not considered Tefillah Shebetzibur. So what do we see? We see that it's not just 10 individual people saying Shemona Esrei. It creates a new thing, Tefillah Shebetzibur. And you only create it if you have 10 people davening at the same time. We've heard that in many shirim of Tzika Reisman, that there's the new concept of Tefillah Shebetzibur. I'm sure Rav Yoshe Ber has a lot of Torah on that, and maybe, I think it's coming up later on.
Yeah, but what happened by Chazaras Shas if you only have 6 people?
Yeah, hang on, we'll get there. No, that won't work. Walter, what we're going to get to is, do you have to wait as the shots for 10 people to finish before you start? That I'm not answering yet because we're going to get there. Right now we've started, Walter. When we start silent Shemona Esrei, they're saying that Chatchila you should have 10 people davening Shemona Esrei.
Yeah, but if you don't have 10 people and you have 6 people davening, because you
Yeah,
can,
but according to the Dayan Weiss, it's okay. Not
Yeah.
according to Rav Moshe, not according to Chai Adam, not according to Mishnah Berurah. We have a little bit of a heter of the Dayan Weiss said it's okay. But otherwise, I think, but even he said, the lechatchila yesh lahachmir heichad efkar.
Yeah, but I'm talking about b'di'evet over here, where you just don't have it, and you have people who want to leave. So you know, so
No, I'm not
Right.
talking about people want to leave Walter. I'm talking about we've reached Shmona Esrei.
no, I'm saying,
Let's say there's 12, let's say there's 11 people in the shul, and 7 people have reached Shmona Esrei, and the others are still saying Shema. That's a problem. He wants you to have 10 people when we start Shmona Esrei. We're
I
not
hear what,
talking yet now about the shots davening that it's going to come.
okay.
But that's a pretty, right? Were we aware of this?
We learned previously that there's a special merit to 10 people davening at the same time. That it's certainly be Mekabel Shemayim. The 10 people davening together have a much stronger effect on.
But that's if we're davening. But Tefillah b'tzibur means Shmona Esrei.
Yes.
So we've got it. So to get that special milah,
You have to be together.
the 10 have to be davening Shmona Esrei when we start. That's what we learned so far. The Dayan wife says it's nechshav l'tefillah b'tzibur. He says 6. If 4 of them are davening Shema, but there's 6 starting the davening, he said it's okay. It's considered somewhat tefillah b'tzibur, not full-fledged. Rav Yaakov Yellen is there, right?
Yes.
In the valley, in your minyanim. Is it common that there are 10 people that saying Shmona Esrei at the same time?
I don't think so. I don't think we check. I mean,
Right.
you have a minion. The repetition is another story, but just to start the silent Shemon Esrei, no,
Right.
I don't
I
think so.
think these are eye-opening halachas for us, for all of us.
And I'd venture to say in the first minion where, during the week, especially now when it's very dark, you get 11, 12 people. You may not have Taka 10 starting at the same time.
So the
That's
Dayan Weiss,
Yeah.
after Shisha Mispal Levad B'tzir of Dalet Sheina Mispalim, Nechshav L'Tefillah B'tzibur. So we have that. And the Tzurba knows that they're saying something very powerful here. So they added support for the Minchas Yitzchak in the Rambam. Keitzad Yitfilas Atzipor. Yeh echad mispal b'kol ram v'kol shomim. So first of all, he's now taking a whole different tack. He says that Tefillah b'tzibur is when you have the shots and everyone listens. That's not what we've been learning so far. We haven't even mentioned the shots. We've mentioned that everyone starts the silent Shmona Esrei. There should be 10 davening together. That's not what they're quoting the Rambam here as. He says, "Yeh echad mispal b'kol ram v'kol shomim." You can't have a shliach tzibur unless you have 10 adults, and the shliach tzibur is echad mehem. He says even if there were some that already davened, the yatzu yidei choyvason, mashlimim lan lasara, v'hu shiyu rav asar shlo yispalalu. So that's a big statement of the Rambam. It seems to say that as long as you have 6 who haven't davened yet, that's enough. These are the Devarim Shebekdusha. You need to have 10. And Lechura, you could extend everything we just said, that maybe there's only 6 people that are up to the Kriyas Torah, and the other 4 are not there yet, but they're in the room, so it gives it a minion. Or Kedusha. Right? Kedusha. Okay. However, the Shulchan Aruch Harav rules in accordance with the simple understanding of the Rambam that even if only 6 are saying Shmona Esrei, it's still considered Tefillah B'tzibur. But how would Rav Moshe and those that require 10 were saying Shmona Esrei to be deemed Tefillah B'tzibur explain the Rambam? So Rav Chaim Soloveitchik explains that the Rambam is referring specifically to the Chazar Sashatz, the repetition of the Amida. In this case, the Rambam allows the minyan to consider 6 individuals who have recited Shemona Esrei now together with 4, who have davened previously or plan to do so later, or maybe they're still davening their Shemona Esrei, right? Right? When we turn around and we start counting, do we have 6? Right? Because maybe some other people are still davening, but they're not ready to answer the shots. However, one cannot use the Rambam's ruling here as proof that having only 6 individuals out of a minyan of 10 reciting the silent Amida is considered Tefillah B'tzibur, right? Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik is saying that the Rambam's words of 6 is enough is only that you could start, the shots can start with 6. Doesn't have to wait for all 10 to finish, that you have to count a minyan before the shot starts counting. Rabbi Chaim is learning that the Rambam's din is that you can start the shots when there's only 6 that have finished, or even there's only 6 that have davened. 4 have already davened. They're just hanging around and to make the minyan according to the shot. Let's say somehow you finish Shemona Esrei and some people left and there's 4 still there or something. So Hadin, the Paris al Shema, L'shitas Rashi, who Baruch Hu Kriya Shema Kedusha. We're going to see in the Gemara, there's phraseology that says Porsin al Shema. That means you cover the Shema. Now Rashi explains that refers to Baruch Hu, Kriya Shema, and Kedusha. It's going to say the one who is Paris al Shema can also get the maftir or something like that. It means whoever davened Shachris and said Baruch Hu and Kriya Shema and Shemona Esrei. Well, so Dina Parshman Lashon Rashi who Baruch Hu Kriya Shema Kedusha ve'enot tzarich kol asar shlo yitzpalalu, and you don't need all 10 who are in that category that they all not had davened. But Tefillah B'tzibur Chazar Sashatz, Tefillah B'tzibur is when the Chazan repeats it. When everyone is davened and they're just listening. They all don't have to be mechuyev. 6 is enough. Aval mispalalin, to daven Shemona Esrei together as a tzibur, b'yachid. That means we're all going to say our silent Shemona Esreis. Tzrichin shekulam yispalu. You need 10 daveners. Lachein b'chazar sashat shekulam shonim v'zeh tefilosam dai berov. Where one guy is davening, everybody's listening. There you get away with only 6. Aval b'tefillah b'lachash kisharov minyan mechuyavin u'miut kvar yispalalu lo yuchli tzarf she'yanikra shespal b'tzibur. As if there are people who have already davened, and you only have 8 or 7, it's not good. It's not Tefillah B'tzibur.
Why does the Rambam introduce this section? The case that he Tefillah B'tzibur. I mean, he's talking about Chazor Shatz. I mean, that's what it says, right?
That's what.
But he's still calling that Tefillah B'tzibur. That's the Tefillah.
Okay, it is a Tefillah B'tzibur. We'll see. That has important ramifications as well. The Tefillah B'tzibur, the Moedim, that has ramifications. That it's a Tefillah B'tzibur. Without that, there are problems. But what we're learning tonight is that there's another aspect of Tefillah B'tzibur that 10 men have to daven the silent Shemona Esrei together. And that creates a mahus of Tefillah B'tzibur as well. And bring the proof of the Rambam, because immediately he says, but you see, Chaim HaLevi, the Mishnah Berurah, they all understand that silent Shemona Esrei, 10 people davening together before we get to the shots is also called Tefillah B'tzibur.
Yeah, but how come then you can start davening when you only have 6? They all say that you can start davening before
No,
that.
they're saying you can start, but it's not. You're not going to get the mile of Tefillah B'tzibur unless there are 10 men davening Shemona Esrei together. Then it's other. We said because it's not called Tefillah B'tzibur. Mishnah Berurah said, and Rav Moshe said it b'feirush, that you need 10 people davening together. That means those listening, when it's the shots, that's when we have a heter of only 6 who have not davened yet. But For Tefillah B'Tzibur to be called Tefillah B'Tzibur, when the 10 men daven Shemona Esrei, we should try to get everyone to daven together. That's what's coming out tonight.
So you need much more than 10 people at a minyan then sometimes.
Or we all have to, by the way, remember, we learned din. I'm going to remind
Right,
everybody.
you have to catch up. Yeah.
Catch up. You see, it's we have to do that. You got to say Ashrei, Baruch Sha'amar, Ashrei, Yishtabach, Kriya Shema, and everybody's got to be together. That's much more important than anything. And then you go back and say the whole thing.
I think people mix up that halacha. Maybe you should get up and machris to everyone what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, we're learning Be'iyun tonight, right? I mean, it's opening our eyes. The explanation of Rav Chaim within the Rabbah would presumably be accepted as well by Rav Moshe to explain why his position doesn't contradict. The Yalkut Yosef mentions both opinions and writes that in situations involving potential bittul Torah, one can be lenient and even join a minyan where some have already davened while the majority have not. So it looks like the Yalkut Yosef is more lenient here, and that allows even by Shemona Esrei.
Only if the people who have davened already are sitting and learning Torah at that time.
Let's see what he says. Let's close with this piece of the Yalkut Yosef. There's only 6 or 7. And like Bernie's pointing out, you have some koilel youngalite. They've davened already, but they're hanging around to help make the minyan. He goes against the Mishnah Berurah and against Rav Moshe. And he says, even though there's only 6 or 7, it's considered Tefillah B'Tzibur. They can do everything. The shots can say it, the Chazaras HaShatz. You could do Birchas Kohanim. Sharova minyan kekulo. Uki'ilu ayu kol asor mispalim yachdo. Yesh oimrim shetzorach shi asor shelo yispalu kadei shetfilos nechashav v'yom b'tzibur. Who are the Yesh oimrim? We know. It's the Chai Adam. It's the Mishnah Berurah. It's Rav Moshe Feinstein. But Malcolm sheyesh bittul Torah ein lahachmer b'zeh. He says if there's going to be a bittul Torah, meaning you can allow these guys to sit and learn or whatever. How about this? He says like this: if you have 10 men who daven Shemona Esrei together, and 2 people are late for work and they leave, and you don't do a Chazaras HaShatz, you're Mekayim Tefillah B'Tzibur. Says it. Concerning 10 who have prayed the silent Amidah together, even if it happens that they do not recite the repetition, such as where some of them left, it's still considered communal prayer. That's a huge chiddush. In practice, it would seem.
Does that chiddush mean that the Chazaras HaShatz can take place?
No. He's talking, the place where he said it could take place is you have 3 who are finished davening, but they're hanging around. You have 7, so you have 10 in the room. What he said is
to leave.
To do Chazaras HaShatz, you need 10 in the room. You could have 6 who have not davened and 4 who have davened.
But then what? Kiddush is not said, and you don't say, and you just stop. If
you have only 8 people, you have no rishus to do Tefillah B'Tzibur. You have no Shliach Tzibur anymore. And you don't say Kiddush, and you don't do anything. You don't say Kaddish. No. Just because you had a minyan at some point, it doesn't create a minyan for the rest of the Tefillah. So, but the big chiddush is it's considered Tefillah B'Tzibur. Without it, it's considered that the people had whatever mila we get with Tefillah B'Tzibur, you got it. Even though the shots never read the shots. Now, in practice, it would seem that ideally one should try to comply with Rav Moshe and Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, which also seems to be the understanding of Chai Adam, and is agreed to even by the Minchas Yitzchak where possible. Accordingly, one should try to wait until at least 10 men are present that plan to recite the Shemona Esrei. The same applies when the minyan is larger but less than 10 already to begin Shemona Esrei. If during Chakra, some are still in the middle of Birchas Kriya Shema. If that is not possible, you can rely upon the sheet of the Minchas Yitzchak that Tefillah B'tzibur is fulfilled even with 6 or more, as many other poskim hold this way as well as even L'chatchila. See the Piskei Teshuvos, who strongly argues in face of a lenient position even L'chatchila. The Isha Yisrael, though, seems to present both approaches having equal weight. The conclusion to be stringent L'chatchila is based upon the recommendation of the Hebrew Tzurba Rabban Chia that discusses this subject. So
wouldn't
we have
waiting around,
poskim. Go ahead, Abe.
waiting around be a hefsek?
No, what kind? You mean you're by Goal
Yeah.
Yisrael? Tzur,
Yeah.
right before Tzur Yisrael, you wait. You wait. There's no hefsek at that point. And then when everybody's ready, Tzur Yisrael. And Baruch Hashem Goal Yisrael and in Chanami, you shouldn't say Goal Yisrael and wait. It should be waited before Tzur Yisrael. And people should be encouraged to catch up. They get there on time and catch up with the way we know. We were given a lot of dinim in volume 10 or volume 9. How do you catch up? What is the kadima? It was Baruch Shamar Ashrei Yishtabach. If you have a little more time, you get the 2 Halalukas. Remember the Karov Godlo and the Kol HaNeshama. There was a kadima there. And then you go back later on and you say the ones you missed. Then you get right up. So there's a real chiyuv to do that. So we can say Tefillah B'tzibur the proper way. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay.